So for 2,4b, what we're going to practice doing is finding the equation. So you were getting pretty good at graphing them. Now it's a matter of, can we find the algebraic equation that matches? So that's our main focus on this lesson, writing those equations that match the particular information that they have provided, okay? So there's some equations you have to have memorized, please. One, most people are very, just familiar with that, is y equals mx plus b. Remember, m is your slope. 0b is your y-intercept. Okay? So there's three equations you want to memorize. First, slope-intercept form. Most of you have that in your head, y equals mx plus b. Now, as you head, hopefully next year, to, say, a pre-calc class or a college algebra class, and then your senior year or later on to a calculus class, as you go toward that, this next equation I think is really helpful for some of the purposes, especially in a Calc 1 class. That's called the point-slope equation. It doesn't really need an S there, but if you know a point, x1, y1, and a slope, you can find an equation of the line by just plopping it into this formula. So it's y minus y1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x1. Now the point you're plugging in, the x1, y1, is here and here, okay? And then the slope that you're plugging in is here, okay? So it's really just a very nice way for you to take a point and a slope, plop it in, and then you've got an equation. Now, here's the problem, though. Many times, so like when I taught calculus, this formula comes up quite a bit. And I would just tell my students, hey, make sure you understand how to solve it for y. It's because usually the instructions may say, put that into slope-intercept form. So just be careful with that. So this formula just allows us to get to here. You might have to do a little rearranging depending, okay? And then, of course, you do need to know your slope equation for 2 points, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So the change in y over the change in x, rise over run. It's also good to know that parallel lines have the same slope, and perpendicular have opposite signs, and they are reciprocals. They multiply and get -1, okay? So that's the stuff you need to have in your head. Eventually, we are going to have a chapter test on chapter 2. Of the formulas you need, those are really kind of the most important. So your slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. Your point-slope equation right here, y minus y1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x1. It's really just your slope equation rearranged. You kind of cross-multiply and you get that equation. So it didn't just magically appear. It is kind of derived from that. Remember that parallel lines have the same slope. Perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocals. So those are the main kind of things to make sure you have memorized as we continue this process, okay? So, and I think maybe we have 2 more sections left of the chapter, so we're getting pretty close to being done with, everything, okay? So in this lesson, I'm not just going to have you graph the line. Actually, for the homework, I didn't ask for any graphs, but I need to find the equation that goes with it. Okay, so does everybody have the equations to memorize written down? Yeah. Okay, so let's look at our first example. It says, find the equation of the line in slope-intercept form with the slope of -2/3 through the point -6, 1. So if they've given you, if you know a slope and a point, you need to use the point-slope equation. So y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So all we're going to do is we're going to take the information and we're going to plop it in, okay? So our m is negative 2/3. Our x1, y1 is the negative 6, 1. So we're just going to plop that information into that equation, okay? So let's look where things go. So your x1 goes here. See how you're subtracting the x1? So watch that. If you're subtracting an x1, you have to change its sign. Here's where your y1 goes, right here. You're subtracting it, so we got to change its sign. And then your slope goes here. So let's take out the x1, y1, and m and put in the numbers that we know they are. So your x and y sit there and wait, because that's going to be the equation that's going to form everything. So it's y minus my y value equals my slope times x minus my x value. You see how that becomes a plus 6. So we're subtracting a negative 6. Two negatives make a positive. So just change that sign. Does anybody have any questions on how we got to that phase of things? Does that make sense how we plopped into the formula? And that's why you have to have those memorized, okay? So now we want to solve it for y. Here's kind of the 2 steps that you have to take. Usually 2 steps get you there. First thing we want to do is we want to distribute this to both of those. So that's pretty common to be the next phase of things. So let's leave that 1 where it's at. Let's take that negative 2/3 and distribute it in. Now, just throw it in front of the x, because that's your slope. So it should end up being the coefficient on x. But we have to multiply this by 6. So we're doing negative 2/3 times 6. Now, the easiest way to do that, I think, is just to multiply the tops and divide by the bottom. So if we have negative 2/3 times 6, what's negative 2 times 6? Negative 12. And then you can just divide that by 3, right? Negative 12 is divisible by 3. And so we get negative 4. So that's the easiest way to do that in your head. You multiply by the top of the fraction, you divide by the bottom. So negative 2 times 6 is negative 12, divided by 3 is negative 4, okay? Now, see how they wanted it in slope-intercept form. That means you want y equals mx plus b. What's the only thing at this point that's kind of holding us up from being in the correct form? Yeah, that minus 1, right? It needs to move. So we're going to add 1 to both sides. And then we got it. Y equals negative 2/3 x minus 3. Okay? So now let's graph it. You can graph it from the original information. You could graph it from the equation. Let's graph it from the equation, and then we'll be able to check our work. So it's going to be a good way to check our work. So start at negative 3. Count down to over 3. Or you can go up 2 to the left 3. And make your line. Okay. Now, the thing I always ask myself, did I hit the original points they talked about? So did I go through the point, negative 6, 1? So did I do something funky? 3, down 2 over 3, up 2 over 3, up. Oh yeah, I didn't quite, my line itself. Wait a second. Let me make it actually hit what it's supposed to. Because I'm like, something's wrong. So you might see how my algebra and my geometry didn't completely line up. So let me put my line where it should go. Okay. I think those points are good. Yeah, it's okay now. It's better. Okay. So our slope is negative 2/3, just like we thought. But what you can check is, did I hit the point negative 6, 1? And I did. So it should hit the original point given. It should hit the y-intercept you found. They all should go together, your algebra and your geometry. I was able to find that my line wasn't quite lined up perfectly because it didn't go through that initial negative 6, 1. So you should check your work as you go, Okay, everybody good with that example? Okay, let's do another one. Now, if you were given just 2 points, what you want to do, the first step is you want to find the slope using the slope equation. Second step, you want to use your point slope form, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And the third step is to solve for y. Okay, so if you follow those 3 steps, what is my slope? Plop into the slope, point slope form, solve for y. Those 3 steps will get you a long way for most of these problems. So the first thing we want to do is we want to find the slope. So label your points. Now it doesn't really matter which one you call x1, y1, or x2, y2. As long as you're consistent, that's all that matters. Okay, let's plop into there. So it's 3 minus 2 over 5 minus 3. You can kind of tell 5 and 3 is this point. 3 and 2 is that point, so it's just a good way to kind of check your work. You get 1 on the top, 2 on the bottom. Our slope is 1/2. Okay, so that's always your first step. If you don't know the slope, it is your job to find the slope. Now we're going to use the formula y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Now, we earlier already labeled this x1, y1, so just use it again. You have it labeled. It's a good way to do. We know now this is our m. Plop them in. Okay? So we're going to get y minus 2 equals 1/2 of x minus 3. And then the third step is to solve for y. So we got the answer. That's the correct equation of the line. It just doesn't look good until we solve it for y. So we're close. We're close. Okay, so let's solve that for y. Remember how I did it earlier. You distribute. So in this case, 1/2. 1/2 times 3, you can call it 1.5. I don't care. You can put it over 3 over 2. I'm going to leave it 3 over 2. And then you just have to add that 2 to both sides. And so we get y equals 1/2 x plus, because that would be 4/2, 1/2. So now we're ready. We have the equation of the line in slope-intercept form. Let's see if we got it right. So go over, let's do it the opposite way this time. Let's go to the point 3, 2. Let's go to the point 5, 3. Let's make our line. 3, 2, 5, 3, that's right. Okay, now let's check. And again, my line is a little wonky. It's not bad, but it's still not great. Anyway, we do hit the y-intercept is 1/2. We do go up 1 over 2. Up 1 over 2, so our slope is correct. So our equation matches the given information. If I draw 3, 2, and 5, 3 and connect it, or if I start at 1/2 and go up 1 over 2, I should still get the exact same line either way. So now we're using some of those algebra skills. On the homework, you're not going to be graphing, but you can check your work by graphing. Just go to Desmos. Type in the equation y equals 1/2 x plus 1/2. Did it hit the points 3, 2, and 5, 3? Then you did it right. So you can check all of this by just having Desmos open in a tab. And am I getting the correct equation that matches the information? Okay. Everybody okay with example 2? Okay, now we're ready to look at example 3. Example 3 says to find the equation of the line through negative 9, 2, that's perpendicular to y equals negative 3x plus 2. So I really am going to use kind of that same 3 steps as before. The first thing we have to ask ourselves, what is the slope? Well, we don't use the equation, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We're going to use this. What's the slope of that line? Negative 3, right? Now, if it was parallel, that's our slope, but it's not. It says perpendicular. So you want to change that sign and find the reciprocal. So what's it going to be? It's going to be 1 over 3, right? So our slope is going to be a positive 1/3. Now, once we do that, you still follow those same 3 steps. Next step, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, let's take and plop that in. So first step, we already found the slope. Second step, this is x1, y1. Plop it in. Y minus 2 equals 1/3 x plus 9. See how that negative 9 became a positive 9, and that positive 2 became a negative 2. We're subtracting those, so those two should switch signs in that formula. Okay, so third step, solve it for y. So we're going to distribute. Let's distribute that. We get y minus 2 is 1/3 x plus 3. And then we are going to add 2 to both sides. So we get y equals 1/3 x plus 5. So how do we tell if we're right? Well, this time I'm not only going to graph the line I was given, I'm going to graph the original line, I'm going to make sure I hit negative 9, 2, and I'm going to make sure I'm perpendicular to the original line, okay? So let's make the original line, I'm going to make it green. I'm going to start at positive 2. I'm going to go down 3 over 1, because my slope is negative 3, down 3 and over 1. I'm going to go up a little ways too, because you saw I can't draw very well. Okay, so I got my original line. That's this one right here. Okay, and now let's graph this one. I'll graph that one red. Okay. Now, if I start at positive 5, go up 1 over 3, I better hit negative 9, 2, or something is wrong with my math, or just maybe my drawing. Okay, I'm going to start at 5. I'm going to count up 1 over 3. I can do that a few times, really stretch it out. I can go down 1 over 3. And let's make our line. Okay. So there's 2 questions you should ask yourself. Am I perpendicular to my original line? Yeah. And so if you're doing this on Desmos, type in both equations on 2 separate lines. You should see they cross at a perfect 90-degree angle. Check. Did I go through the point negative 9, 2? Yes. So algebra and geometry should go together. So if if they're asking me to find the algebraic equation, you can check your work in Desmos by looking at the graph. So you should always be able to work together. But there's 3 main steps always to find the equation of a line. What's the slope? Use the point slope formula, rearrange it and solve it for y. That's pretty much the steps, the 3 main steps. Any questions about example 3 before we move on to our last example? Any questions there? Okay, last one. Find the equation of the line through negative 2, 3 that's parallel to that y equals negative 3x plus 2. What is the equation of this line, y equals negative 3x plus 2? Negative 3. So what is the slope that I get to use if I want to be parallel to that? I got to use the same thing, right? It doesn't change. I'm going to use negative 3. Now, I have that and the point, x1, y1. So now we get to plop it into that formula. Remember that formula you need to memorize, y minus y1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x1. So all we're going to do, you have to get that formula into your brain, okay, is I'm going to put my point here and here. My slope goes here, okay? Just plop those in. So we get y minus 3 equals negative 3 times x plus 2. So you see how they're the opposite of what they started. My 3 became a negative, my 2 became a positive. So that's just plop it into the formula. Substitution, that's why we practice substitution at the beginning of the year. And now it's just a matter of solve it for y. Okay, so we're going to take that, we're going to solve it for y. So how do we do that? Every single time, if there was something that needed distributed, I would say do that first. So that would be negative 3x minus 6. And then we got to move that, that negative 3 that's with the y. We would do that by adding 3 to both sides. And so we get y equals negative 3x minus 3. So how do we check your work? Well, if you're doing this and you have your Chromebook there, let's put both equations on our graph paper. Let's graph both of them, okay? So remember that equation that we did for this one. We're going to start at 2, go down 3 over 1. We're going to make our graph. Okay. Now, we better be parallel. Our new equation better be parallel. So now let's graph this one. And I think we're ready to start our homework. Okay. So we're going to this time start at negative 3. We're going to go down 3 over 1. We're going to graph our line. As you can tell, they should look like railroad tracks. They're not going to meet. It went through the point negative 2, 3. So if we go negative 2 to the left and 3 up, it did go through the point negative 2, 3 like I wanted. It's parallel to the line they told me. So again, the equation and the graph should all go together. Okay? Okay, so here's your assignment. So the top 21 through 29, you're just find the slope and y-intercept only, okay? For 21 through 29, what is the equation in slope-intercept form? So you can use any of the rules we've done so far to find those equations. Then you're only doing the odds. These are odds from 31 to 41. And then here's a little bit of a practice from earlier in the chapter, okay? So that's, you got all period to work on this. And then don't forget about your 2-4A from yesterday. And if you have any questions, we can go over that too, okay?